Hello, students. Welcome back to your history class. Okay, so now we are back to history class, and we still have to complete the chapter. We had stopped at this quatrain by Omar Khayyam. So we'll continue from where we stopped. We were talking about learning and culture, and what I told you last was that Umar Khayyam was an astronomer and a mathematician, and he lived at various times in Bukhara, Samarkand, and Isfahan. Isfahan. Okay. Now, till the beginning of the 11th century, Ghazni became the center of the Persian literature life. Poets were naturally attracted by the brilliance of the imperial court. Rulers also realized the importance of patronizing arts and learning for enhancing their prestige. They understood the importance of art and learning. Muhammad of Ghazni, he gathered around him a group of poets who composed anthologies called as divans and epic poetry called as matnavi. The most outstanding was Firdausi. He took 30 years to complete the book Shahnama, that is Book of Kings. It is an epic of 50,000 couplets which has become a masterpiece of the Islamic literature. The Shahnama is a collection of traditions and legends. Most popular of that is Rustam. The Shahnama poetically depicts Iran from creation right up till the Arab conquest. So there are 50,000 couplets, and it is a masterpiece of Islamic tradition. Okay. It was in keeping with the Ghaznavid tradition that Persian later became the language of administration and culture in India. The catalogue Kitab al-Firist of a Baghdad bookseller, Ibn Nadin, the catalogue Kitab al-Firist of a Baghdad bookseller, Ibn Nadim, describes a large number of works written in prose for the moral education and amusement of the reader. There are large works that are written for moral education as well as amusement for readers. The oldest of these is a collection of animal fables called Kalila wa Dimna. The names of the two jackals who were leading characters were Kalila and Dimna. It is the Arabic translation of a Pahlavi version of the Panchtantra. The most widespread and the lasting literary works are the stories of hero adventures such as Alexander and Sindbad, or those of unhappy lovers such as Case, known as Majnu or Madman. These have developed over centuries into oral and written traditions. The Thousand and One Night is yet another collection of stories which is told by a single narrator, Shahrazad, to her husband night after night. The collection was originally in Indo Persian and it was translated into Arabic in Baghdad in the 8th century. More stories were later added in Cairo during the Mamluk period. These stories depict human beings of different types: generous, stupid, gullible, crafty. And they are told to educate, these stories are told to educate and entertain. In his Kitab al Bukhala, that is a book of misers, Jahaziz of Basra collected amusing anecdotes about misers and also analyzed greed. From the 9th century onwards, the scope of adab was expanded to include biographies, manuals of ethics, mirrors for princes, and above all, the history and geography. The tradition of history was well established in literate Muslim societies. History books were read by scholars and students as well as the broader literate public. For rulers and officials, history provided a good record of glories and achievements of a dynasty as well as examples of the techniques of administration. In the two major historical works, Ansab al Ashraf, that is, genealogies of the nobles. So, in two major historical works, Ansab al Ashraf of Baladhuri and Tariq al Rusul wal Muluk of Tabari, that is, History of Prophets and Kings. So, these are the two major works, that is, genealogies of the nobles, that is Ansab al Ashraf, and the next one is Tariq al Rusul wal Muluk, that is History of Prophets and Kings. The whole of human history was treated with the Islamic period as the focal point. In both these books, it is looked upon as Islamic period being the focal point. The tradition of local history writing developed with the breakup of the caliphate. So, how did the tradition took? How was the tradition formed? By breaking up of the caliphate. Books were written in Persian about dynasties, cities, or regions to explore the unity and variety of the world of Islam. Geography and travel. Geography and travel constituted a special branch of adab. These combined knowledge from Greek, Iranian, and Indian books with the observation of merchants and travelers. In mathematical geography, the inhabited world was divided into 7 climes. Okay, I think I have skipped one slide somewhere. I'm just going to pause and check. Okay, so the geography and travel constituted a special branch of adab. These combined knowledge from Greek, Iranian, and Indian books with the observation of merchants and travelers. In mathematical geography, the inhabited world was divided into 7 climes. That is, that was parallel with the equator, and each was corresponding to our 3 continents. The exact position of each city was determined astronomically. Muqaddasi, that is descriptive geography, Hassan al Taqasim That is, the best divisions is a comparative study of the countries and people of the world and a treasure trove of exotic curiosities. Geography and general history were combined together in Muruj al Tahab, that is, Golden Meadows. It is of Masudi, written in 943 to illustrate the wide variety of worldly cultures. Al-Baruni's famous Tahqiq Ma lil Hind was the greatest attempt by an 11th century Muslim writer to look beyond the world of Islam and observe what was the value in other changing in other cultural traditions. So he was the first one to look beyond Islam. By 10th century, Islamic world had emerged, which was easily recognizable by travelers now. Religious buildings were the greatest external symbols of the world. Mosques, shrines, and tombs from Spain to Central Asia showed the same basic design. So all the mosques, shrines, and tombs from Spain to Central Asia, they showed the same basic design. That is, the arcs, the domes, the minaret, and the open courtyards, and they expressed the spiritual and practical needs of Muslims. In the first Islamic century, the mosque acquired a distinct architectural form. The roof was supported by pillars, and this transcended regional variations. The mosque had an open courtyard, that's a sahan, where a fountain or pond was placed, leading to a vaulted hall which could accommodate long lines of worshippers and the prayer leader. Two special features were located inside the hall. So now they are talking about how the mosque had to be there by design. So they are saying, we are talking about the mosque. It had an open courtyard, and there was a fountain placed in this courtyard. And then there was a vaulted hall, okay, which was to accommodate the long lines of worshipper. And inside this hall, there was a niche in the wall that indicated the direction of Mecca, and there was a pulpit, okay, from where the sermons were delivered during the noon prayers on Friday. Attached to the building was a minaret, a tower used to call the faithful to prayer at the appointed time and to symbolize the presence of new faith. Time was marked in the cities and villages by the 5 daily prayers and weekly sermons. So that time, in those days, the time was indicated by the prayers. The same pattern of construction appeared not only in mosques and mausoleums, but also in caravanserais, hospitals, and palaces. The buildings were built around a central courtyard. The Umayyads built desert palaces in oases. Such as Khirbat al-Mafjar in Palestine and Qusayr Amra in Jordan. These served as luxurious residences and retreats for hunting and pleasure. The palaces, modeled on Roman and Sasanian architecture, were lavishly decorated with sculptures, mosaics, and paintings. The Abbasid built a new imperial city in Samarra amid the gardens and running water, which is mentioned in the stories and legends revolving around Harun al Rashid. The great palaces of the Abbasid Caliph in Baghdad or the Fatimids in Cairo have disappeared, leaving only traces in now literary texts. The rejection of representing living beings in the religious art of Islam promoted two art forms: calligraphy. Okay, so in the Islamic art, you will never find living beings being shown. They were not allowed to draw humans or even animals. So, the rejection of representing living beings in religious art of Islam, it promoted two major art forms, that is calligraphy and arbab and arabesque. Calligraphy is khatati or the art of beautiful writing, and arabesque is the geometrical and vegetal design. Small and big inscriptions, usually of religious quotations, were used to decorate the architecture. Calligraphic art has been best preserved in manuscripts of Quran dating from 8th and 9th centuries. Literary works such as Kitab al-Afghani, that is Book of Songs, Kalila wa Dimna, and Makamat of Hariri, they were illustrated with miniature paintings. In addition, a wide variety of illumination techniques were introduced to enhance the beauty of a book. Plant and floral designs based on the idea of garden were used in buildings and book illustrations. In fact, even today, if you go to a Muslim wedding and if you call a Muslim henna artist, and if you talk to them in their own religion, they cannot draw a peacock or something like that, or a human figure on their own hands, because it is denied. They can't draw a living. They are not allowed to represent any living form in the form of art. Okay, so this practice is still there. The history of the Islamic lands brings together three important aspects of human civilization: religion, community, and politics. We can see them as three circles which merge and appear as one in the 7th century. In the next 5 centuries, the circles have separated. Towards the end of our period, the influence of Islam over state and government was minimal, and the politics involved many things which had no sanction in religion, like kingship and civil wars. The circles of religion and community overlapped. The Muslim community was united in its observance of Sharia, that is, rituals, and personal matter. It was no more governing itself, but it was defining its religious identity. The only way the circles of religion and community could have separated was through the progressive secularization of Muslim society. Philosophers and Sufis advocated this, suggesting that civil society should be made autonomous and rituals must be replaced by private spirituality. So, with this, we come to the end of this chapter. Finally, we have completed this chapter. This was amongst the long chapters that we have done up till now. So, we saw that, if you look at the timeline of the Islamic lands, you will see that Muhammad marries Khadija, a wealthy Meccan trader who supports Islam. Now, Muhammad has a first revelation First public preaching of Islam in 612. First agreement at Aqaba with Medinan converts. Then migration from Mecca to Medina. Arab tribes of Medina shelter the Meccan migrants. Yeah, and then the early caliphate, that is conquest of Syria, Iran, Iraq, and Egypt, and civil wars. Then we saw the Umayyad rule. We saw Damascus becomes the capital. We saw the Abbasid rule, where Baghdad became the capital. Then we saw Buyids captured Baghdad. Then we saw the literary and the cultural efflorescence, rule of the Nizamul Mulk, the powerful Saljuk Wazir who established a string of madrasas called Nizamiya, which was killed by Hashiyan. Then we saw the Crusades. We saw the contacts between Muslims and Christians. We saw death of Ghazali, the influential Iranian scholar who opposed rationalism. And finally, the Mongols have captured Baghdad. This is a map of the Islamic world, Islamic lands. With this, we come to the end of this chapter. So I will just tell you all to make some notes on this part of the chapter and keep. Next class, we are going to discuss notes. So stay home, stay safe, take care, and keep learning.